Hello, everyone. My name is Rebecca Morton. My pronouns are she, her. I'm the Director of Artisan Studio Programs here at Baltimore Clayworks, and we're thrilled that you all have joined us. I would like to acknowledge that I'm joining from my office located on Piscataway and Susquehanna Glen, currently known as Baltimore, Maryland. It is my pleasure to welcome you to our virtual studio tour given today by Kristyn Rohrer. Kristyn, she is a ceramic sculptor born in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Through ceramic process, design, and storytelling, Kristyn takes ownership of their Mennonite upbringing and identity in creating their body of work, bringing a contemporary twist to the nostalgia of Pennsylvania Dutch culture. Kristyn received a BA in sociology with minors in ceramics and German from Kutztown University in 2018 and completed a ceramics art post-baccalaureate program at West Virginia University in 2022. Kristyn was served as a resident artist at the Nampara Arts Cooperative in Morgantown, West Virginia, Ang Pottery in Baltimore, Maryland, and Kutztown University in Kutztown, Pennsylvania, and interned at the Clay Studio in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Kristyn has exhibited ceramic work nationally since 2017 and was a 2024 to 2025 Lormina Salter Fellow at Baltimore Clayworks. For more information about our artist talks, please visit our virtual library at baltimoreclayworks.org and tune in for our next studio tour on Tuesday, March 3rd with Hannah Koto from 1:30 to 2. I will now turn it over to Kristyn.
Hi, everyone, and thanks, Rebecca, for the wonderful intro. And thank you, Playworks, for the opportunity to share my studio space. If some of you were here for my studio tour last year, you might notice that things look a little bit different. I've actually shifted spaces. So still at Playworks, of course, but just in a new spot. So I've got some new shelves and a new orientation in my studio. But as always, I like to keep my pictures up. I always like to point them out because my inspirations are a big part of my practice. So I always have one of my walls is dedicated to lots of quilting patterns and designs, some that my grandmothers did, others that I just liked and found. And then my back wall has lots of pictures from travels that I took. So a lot of those are actually from Iran. So I really take a lot of inspiration also from Islamic architecture and pattern and form. So those are kind of some of the things that I have on my walls in my studio. You might also see some pictures from my community arts students from Halloween this past year. That's also another one of the things that I've been enjoying at Clayworks that I get to do. Right now I'm teaching at the Maryland School for the Blind, as well as Roland Park Elementary Middle School, and I'll be starting a program this coming week at Pimlico Elementary School. So yeah, I figured today you might actually, if you remember my talk from last year, I was getting ready for a big solo show at Clayworks. So I had a lot of sculptures going on, was focusing more on my figurative work, doing a lot of hands, as I often do. But my focus is shifting a little bit right now to some more pottery forms. Those of you who are maybe more familiar with the ceramic space know that we have a big conference coming up in March. This year it's in Detroit. It's the NCCA conference. So because I'll be part of Clayworks, I get to sell some of my work at our exhibition booth. So right now I'm playing with a lot of pottery forms. So I figured I'd show you a little bit of what I'm working on, some of the things I use to make my forms. So right now I actually have been doing a lot with mugs, which is new for me. Some of my friends might be a little surprised to see a mug from me because they might not have for ever, really. So I hand build all of my pottery. I can wheel throw. I just really enjoy the process of hand building. And I get to do a lot of stamping with the slab kind of technique that I use. So this mug, you can kind of see, has this pattern on it. I have this stamp that I made, just handmade out of bisqueware. So I like to make my own stamps. It's really nice. I can just use clay to make more tools to use with clay. So I love the material for that. I also, with these handles, I've started hollow building them. This is a little bit of a technique that I learned from my undergrad professor, Gwendolyn Yapolo. But I use just like paper templates in my work. So this cup mug form really just started as this paper sheet. And I roll slabs of clay really thin and then cut them out with these templates. So then for the handle, I have a little kind of C-shaped template here that I kind of use two of them, and then I pillow them a little bit so they can have a hollow space in between them. But I actually, and this was kind of my first main iteration of these mugs. So I started a new iteration that I can show you. Here are some of the kind of changes I made in my next iteration. So I know I have really tiny hands, but I like mugs that I can fit two fingers in. I can do that with my mugs, but my hands are really small. So I was like, I think I need to add a bit more space with my handle. So I kind of built a wider handle. It sets a little bit higher on the cup. It's a little less cute, but I think it's a bit more functional. So I was trying to think about that more. And I also kind of added this coil into the rim of my cup for this round. That just gives it a little bit of sturdiness. It kind of finishes it off a little more. So I'm happy with those changes, and I'm excited to see how they kind of come out in the next glaze kill. But I've also been doing a couple different forms. I've played with this cup form for a while, but wanted to do a couple different sizes or scales of it. So I made a kind of new version of a smaller for like a sipper cup. So I have a few of these that I made recently. These are really fun because I get to use stamps that are kind of inspired by, if anyone has seen or knows of barn quilts or barn squares, if you are driving through, Lancaster or Holmes County, Ohio, you might see some of these. They're just kind of small, almost like vignettes of a quilt or elements of a quilt that people paint on the sides of barns. So I was kind of inspired by those and started to make little tiny versions of them with these kind of sipper cups. I like to use glaze. Some people, use a lot of slip for these kind of decorative elements when you have a lot of pattern and detail. I'm really into glaze mixing. I mix all of my own glazes. I love the color chemistry behind it all. And I also kind of like how they run. Glazes will flux like that and will fall over texture and pattern, whereas slips will kind of stay stagnant. So I kind of like the showing that side of the material in these cups. So they were kind of fun to play with and make. I'll probably do another round of those for NCGA coming up. But a lot of these were made with different stamps. This one was actually a stamp that I made for my show last year. I had a couple specific platter plates that were inspired by the card game Dutch Blitz, if anyone's heard of it. It's definitely one kept in my family home. So I was inspired by that and kind of made a stamp off of that. But I'm also doing some more of these kind of lace patterns that I've done previously. I'm trying to do some smaller pottery that's easy for people to take on a plane and bring home with them after a big conference. So this kind of pattern was made with this stamp, which was actually pulled from a cake decorating tool that I borrowed from my mother. I guess borrowed is not the right word. I exclusively have it now and no one uses it for cakes anymore. But I really enjoy using kind of baking and cake decorating tools and elements in my practice. Those of you who are familiar with Clayworks or are students here might have seen a class that I'm teaching now. We're actually starting in 2 weeks. We have our, I call it Is It Cake? And so we are going to spend a whole class learning about different clay techniques that are adapted from the kitchen. We're going to learn how to pipe clay like icing. So lots of fun stuff to kind of bring into your practice to adorn your pieces and stuff that I do in my pieces a lot. So those are some of the things in terms of like pottery forms I'm working on and thinking through right now. I'm also kind of working through reformulating my glazes. I had a huge batch of glaze that I brought with me here from West Virginia when I was there previously, but now I'm running out. So I need to mix up a new batch. But I've gotten to a point where some of the materials can't be found anymore. I need to do some substitutes, and I just wanted to have it fit a little better with the clay bodies that I'm using. So right now I have some tests that I've mixed up. They're really just weird powder materials with some water right now. But I also like to have test tiles to help me figure out what my glazes are going to do. I'm right now I'm working with two different clay bodies, so I decided that I'll mix up two different tiles so I can see, how pattern's going to come through, if they're going to be translucent or transparent, and how they'll pick up color on different clay bodies. So that's something that I'm going to play around with a little bit. I really enjoy using rare earth oxides in my glazes. This one, this kind of purple glaze, you can see actually has a color or an oxide called neodymium. I experimented with a lot of rare earth oxides when I did research with my undergrad professor, Gwendolyn Upolo. But she taught me a lot about how to use different rare earth oxides, how they can blend with different colors. This cup also has neodymium on it. So it's nice to kind of play with the variability of it, where you can get very deep, dark colors, but you can also get really light kind of sky blues with it. So it's being very, familiar with your materials, really testing and trying and failing, and then figuring it out. So I think I'm in a little bit of that period right now where I'm kind of testing and trying and failing a little bit, but also succeeding. So we recently had a cup sale for the resident artists to raise money to go to NCCA. So that was a really good time. We had lots of folks upstairs, sold lots of mugs. I also was making some homemade ice cream and sold some of that. So that's always fun for me. But yeah, those are kind of the things that I'm working on in my studio right now. Let's see. I think some other things I could show you are some of these plates I'm working on. I've been playing around with, I really enjoy this log cabin quilt block pattern. I have a couple different stamps that I've made with this pattern of various sizes and various kind of layers. This one has, like, I would say 3 layers of pattern with it that I can kind of play with. I've also been trying to play around with my feet and signing my pots. I have mixed feelings about whether I like the square foot or the round foot. I might start to throw some of my feet onto my pots, but that's something I'm kind of playing around with right now. But I like to use this stamping pattern both on square forms like this to make it really look like a replication of a quilt. But I also like to use them on round forms too. So I have a couple down here that I'm working with. You can also see how I kind of use molds. So this is a round version of that same kind of pattern. I like how with a round plate, it kind of cuts the pattern in an interesting way and is not necessarily fully finished. But I use a lot of actually just like regular dish plates for my molds. If you're using something like this, you really have to make sure that I use cornstarch as my kind of resist base. A material like this, it's not like a plaster or another bisque mold that will kind of soak up moisture. This will retain your moisture. So I have to just kind of use cornstarch in the base to make sure that it doesn't stick. But then it can lift right out and I can still get the form I want and still get it to kind of hold its shape. But yeah, I really like that this log cabin quilt block pattern. I think it kind of bridges a little bit of my two inspirations together with the kind of architectural feel of the linear block pattern. It comes from, a log cabin being built by logs and stacks of wood. So I really like that kind of angular element of it, and it reminds me a lot of the Islamic architecture that I'm really inspired by. But it's also a very, traditional kind of quilting pattern that many Mennonite quilters will use. And is also very much a symbol of home and family, and things that I'm kind of commenting on and exploring a little bit in my work. So those are the main things that I'm working on. Oh, another thing that I could show you is some of these wall pieces I have back here. These are actually they're bisqueware, so they're fired once, but they aren't glazed yet. If anyone remembers or came to my show, I had a number of these pieces in the hallway. I kind of build them hollow. I have a slump mold that I use for the patterning on the slab in the front so it can get that nice pillowed look. And then the border is a lot of detailing of both carving and piping clay and also crimping this edge kind of like a pie. So some of the techniques, like I said, that I kind of teach in my Is It Cake class is what I use to make these wall plates or wall pieces. And I actually learned this kind of like hanging design. I studied with Jen Allen at West Virginia University, and she does a lot of wall hanging pieces and a lot of slab decorated, textured, and stamped pieces. So I was kind of looking at some of her forms and how she was building them. And I've really found that the triangle kind of shape is the best to give yourself a lot of room to be able to hang, and also creates the strength you need and the kind of hollow space you need. But these are really fun to make. They are very time consuming, so I haven't done quite as many of them. But I'm looking forward to glazing more of these after NCECA and probably making some more too. And also maybe making some smaller ones, maybe some pairings, things that kind of go together. I've been interested in exploring more kind of nested or sets of pieces. If you came to my show, you might have seen the first piece at the beginning of the wall was this large kind of quilt installation of 36 plates. So I kind of like the idea of using multiple components to build a larger narrative. And I want to play a little bit more with that. That was a really fun part of my show and getting to play with that. So I want to do some larger scale pieces like that again, and building them modularly in that way is a lot easier, especially when space is a constraint or shipping is hard. So I'm trying to think through ways to make my practice a little more efficient and a little more effective, kind of in this second year of my residency. So this is a sculpture that I made, and that was in my show last year. So this is a hand. It is in a dress that has piping, the back and the front detailing is all piped, hand piped, like icing. I also have one of my favorite parts of this piece is this tiny little purse that I made that just hangs off of the pinky. I used a nichrome wire so there's a wire inside of that, and I piped the little kind of pearl beads on top of it. But yeah, this is kind of, I've really enjoyed with my figurative work, using the hand almost as a personified full figure. Hands are so expressive. I think I also draw kind of inspiration from that, from my own family background, watching my mom, my dad, my mom had a bakery. She's working with her hands every day. My dad's a farmer. He's working with his hands. My grandmothers were quilting and woodworking. My grandfathers were farmers. So using our hands in that way feels just really pertinent and like telling to a person. Your hands carry so much information about you and the life you've lived. So I really enjoy kind of creating these hand sculptures where you can manipulate the hand into these different positions and give it a lot of movement and character and expression in a way that's almost reminiscent of a whole body. So yeah, that's kind of my one of my little hand sculptures. You're also welcome. If you go on Clayworks website, there's also a whole publication on my show, and there's 4 sculptures in there from the conscientious objectification was my show. So feel free to check that out if you'd like some more pictures. And you can also check out my Instagram too.